Hi everyone, my name is Jasmine. On today's episode of The Slain Project, we're going to be talking about two women who were murdered by a man named Wilson Chouest in July of 1980. The first one is Shirley Soosay. She was known as the Kern County Jane Doe for over 40 years. The second one is Ventura County Jane Doe. She is still unidentified to this day. And if you would like to see more videos on missing and murdered Indigenous people, click that subscribe button and the notification bell. Now let's get right into it. On Tuesday, July 15th, 1980, in an almond orchard near Delano, California in Kern County, the body of a woman was found by workers in the early morning hours. She was found approximately 13 rows inside the trees. She was wearing a pink blouse, blue jeans, and very clean white shoes. This unknown woman was savagely murdered. It was reported that she had been beaten, raped, and stabbed about 29 times before she was dumped. Detectives at the crime scene noticed that she appeared to be Native American, and they believed she was between 30 to 40 years old. This Jane Doe had two distinct tattoos on her left arm. On her bicep was a red heart with a yellow ribbon. It said "Love You" above the heart and Shirley in the yellow ribbon. It also said Seattle below the heart. On the forearm was a rose that said Mother above the flower and I love you on the bottom. At the dump site, there were visible tire tracks near the body and no footprints, indicating that she had been dumped from the car. There also was a Michelob beer bottle next to her body. At the autopsy, semen and DNA under her fingernails was collected. Her blood alcohol content was recorded as 0.30. There were also defensive wounds on her hands and arms. A photo of her face was shown to orchard workers, but no one there recognized her. Her fingerprints were examined and there were no hits, so investigators put out a media release and urged anyone to come forward if they knew who she was. They did not believe she was local and suspected she was in the area for several weeks before being murdered. Authorities soon got information from a woman named Pixie. She recognized her tattoos and thought she was a waitress in a bar and that her name may have been Becky or Rebecca Ochoa. Other reports at the time say she may have worked in an apple orchard. These tips were unable to be verified. Police originally believed Jane Doe was taken from a bar in Lemoore, California. The bar has since closed, but in 1980 it was called Ruby's. Whether she was hitchhiking, abducted, or promised a ride somewhere is unknown. This case went stagnant for decades. In 2003, Kern County established a cold case unit and began searching for Jane Doe's identity again. They went to LA's Skid Row because there was a large Native population there at the time, but no one recognized her. They also visited the tattoo parlors there to see if her work could be identified. There was no luck there either. Eventually, they made their way up to Seattle and determined that the tattoos were most likely done there. In 1980, when Jane Doe's body was found, all fingerprints were done manually on paper cards and also had to be examined manually. Investigators hoped with advancements in technology that her fingerprints might have been digitized, so they ran her prints again, but still, there were no hits. There was a break in the case in 2008. Kern County was informed by the Department of Justice that there was a DNA hit from some items found with Jane Doe. The DNA matched a man by the name of Wilson Chouest. He was a known serial rapist. It was stated that the DNA found on the victim's underwear matched DNA on the Michelob beer bottle. There were actually 3 profiles found on the bottle, one belonging to the victim, the other to Chouest, and the third was unknown. He was interviewed soon after the DNA hit and denied everything. Despite the DNA hit, no other action besides this interview would take place until 2012, when DNA from another murder victim in the area was linked to him. On Friday, July 18, 1980, just 3 days after the body of Kern County Jane Doe was found, another woman was found slain. She is still unidentified as of this recording and is known as the Ventura County Jane Doe. She was 15 to 25 years old, 5 feet 2 inches tall, between 110 and 115 pounds. She had brown eyes, black shoulder-length hair with bleached tips. There was a vaccination scar on her left arm and a scar on her left knee. When found, she was wearing a white shirt, red corduroy pants, a black bra, and black underwear. She had red nail polish on her fingers and toes. She had pierced ears, wore heavy mascara, and her eyebrows were shaved and were drawn in. She also had very extensive dental work, and there was black open-toed high-heeled shoes found near her body. She was discovered in the upper parking lot of Westlake High School in Westlake, California, by a school employee. She was also raped, beaten, and stabbed 16 times before she was strangled. An investigator said that there was barely any blood left in her body when she was found. There were also drag marks and a trail of blood from the parking area to a hillside area above the lot where she was found. She was likely dead for about 12 hours prior. Jane Doe also was 4 to 5 months pregnant with a baby boy at the time of her death. The fetus was well nourished and it appeared she was receiving prenatal care for the baby. DNA was taken from the fetus and it was later run through CODIS in an attempt to locate the father. According to an article by KEYT News Channel posted on November 11, 2021, the baby's father was located with genetic genealogy and was identified as a Honduran immigrant. He was living in a Central American community in the Koreatown section of LA. He was unable to provide any more clues about Ventura County Jane Doe. Their relationship more than likely was brief, and he could not remember much after 41 years. Jane Doe also had an episiotomy scar caused from giving birth at least one time before. So somewhere out there is someone who is missing their mother. They might not even remember her at all. Police believe she was abducted from one of these 4 counties: Tulare, Kern, Ventura, or Los Angeles. Wilson Chouest was known to frequently travel between these counties very often. He was released from prison in June 1980, 1 month before the murders, and was living with a woman and her sons in Lemoore, California, which is in King County. In 2012, DNA samples from Ventura's clothing, rape kit, and fingernail scrapings were run through CODIS, and a positive match for Chouest was confirmed. He was incarcerated at the time and serving a life sentence for a series of rapes, kidnappings, and robberies from August and September of 1980 in Tulare County. He was supposed to be eligible for parole in 2017. When the 2 murders were finally linked after the Ventura DNA link, Ventura County would take over the investigations. Wilson was interviewed again for the 2 murders. He continued to claim that he did not know what their names were, but he did say he picked up the Kern County victim at a bar in Hanford, which is about 9 miles from Lemoore. He also stated that he picked up the Ventura County victim while she was hitchhiking in Visalia, which is 20 miles from Hanford and 48 miles from Delano, where Kern County Jane Doe was found. Investigators were combing through the case file and noticed something. When Kern County first interviewed Wilson in 2008, he said he was staying with a family named the Bells at the time of the murders. It was determined that nobody ever followed up on this and nobody ever questioned members of this family. The family was tracked down and a man named Patrick Scott Bell testified at his trial. He was a teenager at the time and said that Wilson told him that he had killed a woman in Bakersfield in July 1980 and that he helped clean his car. Patrick's mother asked what was going on and they told her that Wilson hit a deer with the car. The mom did not think anything of it until questioned about Chouest in 2013. She then realized that the blood was human and that Wilson Chouest was a cold-blooded killer. Wilson was found guilty in 2018 and was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of these two unidentified women. The DNA Doe project would take on the Kern and Ventura County Jane Does in hopes of identifying them through genetic genealogy. The DNA Doe project made the first breakthrough with this new science when they successfully identified Buckskin Girl as Marcia King in April 2018. She had been unidentified for 36 years at the time. They believe Ventura is Hispanic or maybe Native American in origin. She is estimated to be 60% Native American, but Native Americans and Hispanics are both indigenous to North America, so she could be likely just Hispanic. Researchers believe they traced her family from Guatemala to New Mexico, then to LA. Her family matches are very distant cousins, and it is making it difficult to obtain a close family connection. In February 2020, a woman from Alberta, Canada, named Violet Soosay, attended a women's conference and shared that her aunt had been missing since 1979. After the conference, she was contacted by a person who also attended the conference, and they directed her to the DNA Doe Project's Facebook page. They had been working to identify the Kern County Jane Doe. They determined her DNA was Indigenous Cree and from the area of Masquachese, Alberta, which is near Edmonton and part of the Samson Cree First Nation. When Violet saw this, she knew immediately that this was her aunt. Violet had recently seen a crime show where the Kern County Jane Doe was featured, but it stated the name Becky Ochoa, so she assumed it was not her aunt, but she thought this person looked like a Soosay. Now that she was certain this was her aunt, she contacted the researchers with the DNA Doe project. Violet already had her DNA tested with Ancestry.com, and she was urged to upload it to GEDmatch to get positive confirmation. GEDmatch allows consumers to upload their DNA profile to the public database so researchers can sort through DNA matches and build a family tree in reverse. The DNA Doe project used the blouse of the Kern County Jane Doe to obtain the correct DNA sequence for genetic genealogy. In May 2019, it was successfully loaded into GEDmatch, but there were no matches. GEDmatch had recently changed their terms and conditions, which changed the rules of allowing law enforcement to access the DNA databank. Users had to log into their accounts and opt in to allow their DNA records to be obtainable to law enforcement. After a few more months, it was tried again in September 2019, and they received some matches that pointed them in the right direction. They put a release out through their Facebook page stating she was from the Masquachese area. 10 days after this, they were contacted by Violet. It should be noted that when Shirley was listed in NamUs before being identified, her race was listed as uncertain. Improper labeling of Native American people is one of the problems facing MMIP. When their cases are not properly logged, they cannot be located during an online inquiry. There are many other cases where MMIP are labeled as Caucasian, Asian, Hispanic, unknown, or in this case, uncertain. Accurate reporting is required for proper tracking. On April 23, 2021, it was announced to the public that the Kern County Jane Doe was identified as Shirley Ann Soosay, who, according to her family, was last heard from in 1979. Shirley was born in 1945 and her family had 8 children. She was a residential school survivor and attended the school with her friend Flora. Flora would recall that they would laugh and speak Cree when they were by themselves at the school. Shirley's mom was an excellent beater who made regalia, and her dad was a rancher. He died when she was 14 years old. Violet said Shirley was always smiling, laughing, and was very close to her mom. But Shirley was looking for better opportunity and decided to make the move to Vancouver, BC in the mid-1970s. She met a man there and they had 2 boys together. They would part ways and he took the children, who eventually ended up in foster care. Shirley ended up on the streets and would never see her kids again. Shirley would turn to alcohol and drugs to cope. Her family last saw her in person when she attended the funeral of a family member in 1977. She then told her family she was going to Seattle. Violet was only 11 years old when Shirley went missing. She stated that her letters home stopped in 1980. She promised Shirley's mom that she would find her before she died in 1992. Violet began searching when she was 20 years old. She made numerous trips to Vancouver with Shirley's sister Belle, and they inquired at morgues, motels, and even searched in graveyards. Belle would die in 2011, and Violet continued the journey by herself. She was about to give up her quest to find her aunt before the work of the DNA Doe Project was doing fell before her. Violet and her family are grateful for their work. Because of them, she was able to keep her promise of finding Shirley. She was brought back home on May 27, 2022. She was given a proper burial and laid to rest at the Riverside Cemetery on May 28th. May Shirley rest in peace. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you knew Shirley Ann Soosay, please share any memories of her down below. And I hope to see you in my next video.